Welcome to Steve's Cottage with Steve Horner. Steve Horner, a former radio talk show host, helps spotlight the source of today's social chaos while offering practical solutions to the problems negatively affecting you and your family. And now, here's Steve.
What the hell are you looking at? Haven't you ever seen an angry man before? I'm Ted Kaczynski. Some people have called me the Unabomber. And I'm really pissed off. I'm mad as hell and I'm not gonna take it anymore. Right now I'm ready to introduce myself to somebody I've never met. He or she is a manufacturer of clutter, chaos, and noise. And I'm sending it to any town, USA. Hey, wait a minute. That's where I'm at. I'm Steve Horner. This is Steve's Cottage, and we are here in any town, USA. And welcome to the cottage, my good friends. And And I'm going to tell you, it's great to have your company because, after all, we are a lot alike in many different ways. And that's why I've titled this program, Am I Like You? Well, you stay with me. We've got a show here that I think is going to cause some, maybe some consternation, some deep thought with you in the next 25 minutes. Because we are a lot alike in many respects, but in many respects we are not. I certainly probably am a more outspoken man than you. Do some things upset you that don't upset me or vice versa? Well, let's find out. But this is International Women's Day. Oh, do you think I might mention something about women? Quite likely. And as you know, sometimes these women are referred to on this program as cunts. But it's an acronym. C period, U period, N period, T period. Can't understand normal thinking. Women have their periods, but men, we have our exclamation points. Some have exclamation points a little more toxic than others. Last week, I was talking to you about the 2 DVDs that I rented from the library, and one was Ted Kaczynski. Now, Ted was born in 1942, and you've heard of Ted Kaczynski, of course, and you recognize him with the hoodie on and the shades, and I think Ted even had some facial hair. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But he was a professor at Berkeley for just a year before he became totally disenfranchised with society, with the noise, the confusion, the clutter. Now, come on. Does sometimes some of this with all the deadlines, all the noise, all the digital, and then it breaks down, and then you got to find out how you're going to get it fixed, and then the deadlines are coming, and then you let pass it, and then you lose money, and then your family's after you on your neck, and the traffic is bad, and you need groceries. I mean, come on. Sometimes haven't you felt like you're in tears with the frustration? Of course you have. Well, Ted tried to get away from it all, kind of like an a la 1960s hippie. I think they were a little bit angry and confused and pissed off at the society's chaos and noise. So Ted went to Lincoln, Montana, and built himself a little shack. But still, the airplanes and the off-road vehicles, the noise from the county ditch weed trimmer was upsetting him. So he became a killer. And he sent these packages out in the mail that would explode upon opening. And he killed 3 over a period of 17 years and maimed a couple of dozen, I think exactly maybe 23. Ted wasn't the only one getting pissed off in those days. Is Ted something like you? Ted's like me. I could relate to Ted. However, I'm not a violent man, and I would never I would never stoop to such levels as to get revenge on the noisemakers with violence. But as you'll hear in a moment, there are those out there among us, probably a lot more than you might think. On the other DVD was the story of gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, who served right along with Martin Luther King Jr. She was known as the Queen of Gospel. Now, others in her ministry and in her profession wanted her to go with the blues, because Mahalia, that's where you can make the money, singing the blues. But she said, no. Blues only talks about the problems we're entrenched in. Gospel talks about the solutions. God is the solution to all those problems that you want to hang around your neck with, singing the blues and feeling bad and getting down on yourself. God is the answer, and so she stuck to her beliefs through thick and thin. And you know, I thought about that. And I get a lot of grief about doing this show and about writing the books that I do at stevehornerbooks.com. I've got some great self-written books there. And you'll see the intricacies of some of what I'm talking about in those books. They're priced right, and I think you'll enjoy them. So go to stevehornerbooks.com, and you're familiar with PayPal, and that's an easy process. And it'll help you get right to the source of today's social problems. A lot of these books. Because that's what we men do, isn't it? We are pragmatic. We look for the source of the problems. We are cause and effect people. However, what you may have found and what I have found is that if you dare speak up against those whom you believe create the problems, such as the Jew-run press, and I know you don't like me hearing. I know you don't like hearing me say that, okay? But it is Jew-run press, the Jew-run media. They are Jewish people who run these programs. And from my experience, I honestly think that Jews are ethnocentrists. It's us and them. I mean, it's them and us, Jews and Gentiles. I mean, is that a team player? I don't think it is. Probably nice people. I mean, I've met and worked with a lot of Jews, but I don't think that they're team players when it comes to our American society. I think it's out for them. I think they are ethnocentrists. They would call me anti-Semitic to hear me say that. But you see, that's what they have on me. And the press that they own and run calls me then a racist and anti-Semite. You see? So I can't spew or I can't expound any legitimate scrutiny without me being called racist or an anti-Semite. And that's the same problem that we have with electronic media. You know, like, I'm talking about the press here with the Jew-run press, but with radio and television, same thing. With blacks and with women, the alphabet people and illegals at the border. You'll find yourself threatened with lawsuits and name-calling and police action, and certainly back home, an unhappy wife. So, to maintain that harmony at home, which you undoubtedly want, you can't be throwing scrutiny at these people, asking them to be accountable, because they'll rail on you. You're a racist. You're an anti-Semite. You're a sexist. You lose your job. Sweetheart's not happy. So you have to compromise your principles for the sake of money. Who else does that? Sounds like a whore down in Las Vegas. She really doesn't want to sell herself, but I need the money for the family. So she compromises her principles for the sake of money. I ran into another prime example of that revengeful backlash again recently. Let me tell you about it. I was in Oceanside, California last week. Sweetheart Carol and I took a trip to Oceanside, which is just about an hour and 15 minutes from her home in West Covina. Oceanside is just a little bit north of Carlsbad, and all of which is about 30 minutes north of San Diego. But Carol is getting down on me lately, and she ended up with a vicious diatribe of really abusive name calling on me, and I think it's a result of some new friends she has made, and the daughters and the grandchildren, and I've run into this with other women that have money. And they, want to rally around her and protect her. And then here comes Steve. And I've been going out with Carol for about 4 years. But here comes Steve. And, he writes a book called Cunt and Consequences. And you'll see the story of Carol in that book called Consequences. That's my latest. That's the sequel to Cunt. And so in so doing, they come up with all characterizations of Steve and how he's manipulative and controlling and narcissistic and all these lousy stereotypical names that the feminists will rail at you. I call them verbal artillery because they're meant to hurt you. They're meant to corner you. They're meant to shut you up. And so Carol, a few years older than me, sometimes she buys into this, and she just went gaga and I said, okay, sweetheart, I'm taking you home tomorrow. And I did. And this happened on our first night. So I took her home the next day. I came back home, and not only did I stay the days that we had contracted with, but I bought an extra day because I was having really such a really super time. I like to visit with people. When I'm out in the town, I like to go to the quirky shops down around the town. I like to go to the pool halls. I like to go to the taverns. I like to go to the city halls, the libraries. Right next to the city hall in Oceanside is an ancient graveyard. In that graveyard, I ran into gravestones that are, back in these people died in like 1848 and 1849. And so when I got back home, I did my homework and recalled that the Mexican War had just ended in 1848. The American flag was first flown at Monterey, California in 1849, 1850. That's when California became the 31st state in 1850. And these tombstones, they have names like Rodriguez and Garcia and Martinez, Were they standing for and fighting against the United States, or were they standing for Mexico? Who knows? But it's always it always inspires great thought. And of course, I say a prayer over each and every one of them. And then were also some names there that were like Josh Russell and Ben Olson, and they were in like maybe the 8th Cavalry, maybe sergeants or privates. Were they buried by the county, by the state, or by the family? Who knows? But they were probably in to fight the Mexicans. Right there next to the city hall on Main Street in Oceanside. It's several acres. And the tombstones are old. And it really presents quite a history. Well, down from Carlsbad and just a little bit north of Encinitas is a place called Leucadia. And they have a place there called O'Hurley's. And it's a pool hall and a tavern. And it's a beach type place, and it's really fun. And I met and then next door, there's a nice friendly restaurant. So I had a couple of brewskis there at O'Hurley's, taught the locals a little bit about how to play pool, and went to the restaurant a couple of doors up, and had some light fare at the counter. I had mussels with garlic sauce, and then some French bread, and a nice tall light beer. Next to me was a fella that was about 55, bigger than me, white guy, professional looking, tie, suit, friendly fella, outspoken, smart, had a lot to say. So he's downing his whiskeys, and I'm sipping on the tall liter of beer. And after a while, we're talking about A to Z, and I can tell that he's a Trump guy, and he knows I'm a Trump guy, and find out he's a former LAPD lieutenant. And after his third drink or something like that, he says, "Steve, I can't stand humanity." Honestly, that's his exact words. "I cannot stand humanity." So I listen to him. He tells me the problems, the hypocrisy, the lies, the stupid rules, the laws that make no sense. I said, "That's cunt fashioned, Bill." I said, "That is cunt fashioned. Cunts make these programs, and it's listed in the Bible where they shouldn't, but we allow it because we don't want to have a disharmony at home. We don't want to be called anti-Semite or misogynist. But these cunt rules make no sense." He goes, "You're right." And then he told me something about the black disorder, the terrorism. And you've heard me say this. It's like he heard me on the podcast. He said, "Steve, did you know that every black uprising we've had since Watts," and you've heard me say this, "has been because of some guy resisting arrest?" I said, "Bill, I say that on my podcast." He said those exact words. He's angry. Is that like you? I said, "Bill, that's a lot like me." But I said, don't become violent. Don't become violent. Don't let the bastards get you down. Say your prayers, do your exercises, do your readings, take your walks, get away from the digital crap. The whole time he's nodding. He's understanding. He's believing. He's being comforted. And when I walked out, I shook his hand, and then he put his other hand over me. "Thank you, Steve." Well, that made me feel good. And as I'm walking out, I'm thinking of Stephen Paddock, who shot up the Route 91 festival in Las Vegas in October of 2017 from the 33rd floor of the Mandalay Bay, a couple of 100 yards away, machine guns shooting down onto the festival grounds. Killed 60, wounded close to 400. All the cops in the newspaper were saying, "We don't know what the motivation was." Bullshit. The motivation is what's happening with people in America. They're getting upset. Too much noise, too much chaos. Maybe they don't have enough Christ love or goodness in their life to succumb to it. That's possible. That's probably the case. But in any event, it is happening. There's just too much out there. And a lot of it is cunt-oriented. It doesn't make sense. In my strolls through Oceanside, I ended up in the public library, visiting with people. The county clerk, I asked about property taxes, utility bills, and, you learn a lot. In the library, I was talking to people about, certain policies along the way. Then I had to use the men's room, and I walked in there, and I looked at the mirror, and there's the reflection of the man standing next to me. Nice-looking white guy, kid, 18. Looks like he could have been a center on his high school basketball team. And I had used the facilities and I was washing my hands and I said, how's it going? He said, I am mad at everybody. So I comforted him and gave him the tips that I had given Bill. He smiled. Thanks. He goes, thanks. I said, you're going to look at some of that and do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, okay. I said, there's a lot of people out there making these rules and policies that are keeping you confused and angry because it doesn't make sense. So don't let the bastards get you down. So I left him with a nice big smile, and he affirmed his understanding of what I'm saying to him. And of course that made me feel good. But that's, I think, what we all have to do. We all have to understand that there's a real current out there of some real explosive behavior. And I think we need to scale down. This business about going faster only gets you behind her. We've got to find other ways of being happier than to simply find happiness in buying, in finding happiness in making more money to buy more shit. That's what's happening. And it's bringing everybody down. And the policymakers out there, they don't know shit from Shinola. So back in my room at Oceanside, I had received a call from a police officer from St. George. Steve, how's it going? Good, Officer Campbell. I've got a rapport with all these people. He said, I received a call from a sergeant in Atlanta, Georgia. Seems like you've been making phone calls to this group called 100 Black Women. I said, yeah. I made one after she called me. I wrote her an email and I said, don't you, so I'm throwing some scrutiny at her. I'm asking her to make herself accountable. Black groups need to be accountable. I'm not feeling sorry for them for racism, Jim Crow. I think those days are gone. Are there a lot of bastards still out there? Of course. But she's using me as a scapegoat. She doesn't want to be held accountable. I asked her in the email, I said, don't you people have mirrors? Why are you always blaming Steve, white guy? Don't you have mirrors? Your kids are a failure. Your men are irresponsible. They knock you up and they run and now you're on welfare. So she lied. She went to the police and I've got a grammar report in and I'm going to find out. And I'll bet you it's a woman. It's a black woman. I'll bet you is a sergeant. She's siding with this woman, you see. Because we want to get white guy Steve. I told Campbell on the phone, I said I sent an email telling her what I think about these crybaby blacks, always blaming me. She called me at home. A couple of weeks later, I got around to call her. Yeah, Steve, I remember you. I asked her about, the call. She became incensed, started yelling at me, winning, blacks win through intimidation. And that's what she was doing. So she ended up leaving me, angry, frustrated, but she hung up on me. But that's what has happened. So she didn't want to be accountable. And she went to the police and found somebody that was going to side with her to keep me from, barreling down on the group with the heat of legitimate scrutiny. To which I say, if you can't stand the heat of legitimate scrutiny, then get the hell back to the kitchen and bake some cookies where you'll be a lot more comfortable. But I've had those kinds of threats from the Jew-run newspapers. Darlene Superville from the Associated Press calls me. She writes me, don't call me anymore. I'll call the police. I've received the threats from the teacher unions. Same thing from the illegal Mexican advocates. And from the feminists who, like Planned Parenthood. Well, folks, there's a lot more to come in this episode, but I'm out of time, and I've got a cold brewski waiting for me somewhere in the cottage. A good friend of mine, Ernie, told me on the close of this show here, Steve, he says, I like the way you say stay on the less traveled trail, because it provides better rewards, more scenery, and it's just it's a richer, less traveled path of life, and it'll provide richer rewards. He says, Steve, the real life is the space between the notes. So think of life as a musical composition, and you'll understand what I'm saying. Da, 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 da. The space between the notes, that's the life we're living. And I'm asking you, during this life, thanks for joining me, and you take real good care of yourself.
Thanks for joining us. Visit Steve's Cottage again with Steve Horner.